What if the secret to financial freedom has absolutely nothing to do with how much you make and literally everything to do with how you give? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into part 3 of an absolutely incredible 5-part series called Financial Freedom. This sermon was preached by Pastor Noel Sandesh at the Crown of Life Ministries right in Popo. Get ready, because we're about to look at your wallet from a completely new perspective. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the Financial Freedom Framework, the 4 types of biblical offering, creating a love offering, 3 principles of giving, and finally, overcoming true financial fear. Let's just jump right in. Starting with Section 1, the Financial Freedom Framework. To really wrap our heads around financial freedom, Pastor Noel Sandesh identifies 4 core pillars. But here's the thing, you have to notice the crucial order here. Most of us, even believers, instinctively think spending comes right after earning. The paycheck hits the account, the bills get paid, and then whatever is left over kind of becomes the offering or the savings. But this framework argues why that order is just fundamentally flawed. To genuinely experience financial freedom, offering absolutely must intentionally come before spending. If we skip this understanding, true financial freedom just remains out of reach.
Moving on to Section 2, the 4 types of biblical offering.
Now that we've got the order straight, let's see how the Bible actually breaks down offerings into 4 distinct types. First up, we have the tithe. It literally means a 10th part. But pay attention to the specific purpose here. You aren't giving cash directly to God, because let's face it, God doesn't need cash, right? Rather, you're giving it specifically for the growth, maintenance, and support of His house and community. It's the baseline requirement.
Malachi 3 frames this tithe in such a wild way. It's a literal invitation from God to test Him. And this isn't just some Old Testament law. It's a principle of faith that predates the law itself. Just think about Abraham in Genesis 14. He gave a 10th of everything to Melchizedek, way before Moses ever came down from Mount Sinai. The second category is the free will offering. If the tithe is the baseline, the free will offering is everything above and beyond that. Like in Exodus 35, when the Israelites were building the tabernacle, this was a beautiful, voluntary act. It wasn't some fixed requirement at all. It was just a spontaneous contribution from people whose hearts simply prompted them to give out of pure gratitude. Third, we have alms. Now, this one is highly specific. Alms are compassionate charity directed squarely at the impoverished, the widows, the orphans, and the marginalized. Proverbs 19:17 gives us a really stunning perspective on this. It tells us that whoever is kind to the poor is actually lending to the Lord. It literally transforms a simple act of human compassion into a direct transaction with the divine. How cool is that?
Finally, we hit sacrificial giving. This type of giving is absolutely not measured by the total amount on the check, but by the personal cost to the giver. The real question is, does it alter your standard of living? A prime example is the Macedonian churches in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Even in the middle of a severe trial and extreme poverty, they gave entirely beyond their ability. It's the scale of the sacrifice that defines this offering. Okay, let's head into Section 3, creating a love offering. So here is where Pastor Sandesh introduces a massive paradigm shift. Merely practicing these 4 types of giving isn't quite enough. The New Testament insists that our giving must be transformed into a love offering, and that requires a very specific chronology: dedication, intention, and attitude. Let's break down how these build on one another so your offering isn't just a cold transaction.
Step 1 is the step of dedication. And the core idea here is pretty radical. God will not take your money if He doesn't first have your heart. As 2 Corinthians 8 points out regarding the Macedonians, they didn't just give material wealth. First, they gave themselves to the Lord. The Creator of the universe doesn't need your cash. He wants your love.
Step 2 is intention, which brings us to a highly practical question. Imagine your bank account right now. Think about it. If your salary drops into your account on the first of the month and you spend from it all week on groceries, bills, whatever, and then you finally take out your tithe on Sunday, can you genuinely call that a first fruits offering? You've already spent the money. The intention here is all about prioritizing the offering before the spending. It totally echoes the story of Cain and Abel, where Abel brought the very firstborn of his flock.
And step 3 is your attitude. It's about giving not out of guilt, but with a joyful, cheerful spirit. When you combine dedication, intention, and a joyful attitude, you unlock 3 incredibly powerful outcomes. First, your offering is accepted. Second, the money you actually have left over to spend is now under divine protection from unwanted expenses. And third, your storehouse remains perpetually fulfilled.
Moving right along to Section 4, 3 Principles of Giving. Pastor Sandesh anchors all these practical steps with 3 immutable spiritual laws. The first is the principle of proportionality. This brilliantly shows us exactly how God does math. When Jesus was watching people put money into the temple treasury, he didn't care about the massive amounts the wealthy gave out of their abundance. Instead, he pointed to a poor widow who put in 2 tiny coins. Why? Because she gave all she had to live on. God looks at what you have left over, not just what you give. Her offering had immense faith intrinsically baked right into it. The second principle is the law of the harvest, beautifully captured in 2 Corinthians 9:6. This places the power and responsibility directly in our hands. It's really just a simple law of agriculture applied to your finances. The size of your harvest is determined entirely by the scale of your sowing. If you sow a little, you're going to reap a little. It's totally up to us to decide the scale of our harvest. And the third principle is secret giving. Matthew 6:3 instructs us that when we give, our left hand shouldn't even know what our right hand is doing. By removing the desire for public applause or recognition, we invite God's intimate, unseen blessing into our lives. Basically, secret giving brings secret blessings.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Overcoming True Financial Fear.
We've reached the absolute climax of this explainer. Everything we've covered builds to this final paradigm shift, moving from being a servant of wealth to becoming a master of it. This famous verse from Matthew 6 reveals a kind of terrifying reality. It personifies wealth, showing us that money actively, desperately wants to be your master. It literally demands your allegiance. And the only biblical antidote to prevent money from mastering you is the consistent, intentional act of offering. Offering is exactly how you break the grip of greed. Think about the physical metaphor of your own hand for a second. When you grip your money tight in fear, making a closed fist, sure, you hold on to what you have. It won't slip away. But a closed fist blocks out any future blessings. It literally cannot receive anything new. Conversely, an open hand allows money to flow out as an offering, but crucially, it stays positioned to catch whatever God pours in next. Because of this, every single time you open your hand to give a love offering, you're making a profound physical declaration in the spiritual realm. You're actively stating, money is just my tool, but God is my source. You are taking money off the throne of your life and putting it back in the toolbox right where it belongs. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought directly from the series. We so often think of financial freedom as just having endless resources, but this redefines it entirely. Biblical financial freedom is not the absence of financial limits. It is the absence of financial fear. So, I have to ask you, are you exhausting yourself chasing a life with no financial limits? Or are you ready to open your hand, surrender your heart, and step into a life that is entirely free of financial fear? Think about that the next time you look at your budget. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep that hand open.